Hey there and welcome back. If you're a parent of a current or future Virginia Tech student, or you're just curious about investing in real estate in Blacksburg, this video is for you. Now, parents reach out to me all the time wondering whether or not it makes sense to buy a place instead of renting a place for 4 years, or even longer if your student goes on to grad school or maybe takes one of those victory laps like I did in college. Now, in a separate video that I'm gonna link below, I've broken down all the numbers that spell out exactly when and when it does not make sense for parents to buy a condo or townhome for their student while they're here at Virginia Tech. But today, I'm taking that a step further and I'm breaking down exactly what you need to know before you jump into your real estate search here in Blacksburg and what some of my other investor and parent clients have learned along the way. So we're gonna cover the difference between condos and townhomes and especially how that affects financing. I'll explain why location really matters, both for your student and for future renters. We'll talk about how you can buy a property with an existing lease in place and why this actually might be particularly advantageous to you thanks to the timeline that students start looking for housing for the next year. And I'll wrap up with how property management companies can make long distance ownership stress-free. Now, by the end of the video, you'll feel more confident about whether or not investing in Blacksburg real estate can make sense for you and your family, and what to watch out for if you do. So let's get started. First up, the difference between a condo and a townhome. Now, a lot of people use these terms interchangeably, but really they're pretty different, especially when it comes to what you own, what you're responsible for, and this is a big one, how you get a mortgage. Now, a townhome on one hand is usually a multi-level or single-story unit that shares side-to-side walls with neighbors, maybe on one side, maybe on both, but no one above and below you. It typically has its own front door to the street and sometimes a small yard or patio. Now, you typically own the inside of the unit and the land underneath it. Some townhome communities have a homeowners association or an HOA that handles things like roof maintenance, exterior paint, and common areas. Now, let's switch gears. A condo, on the other hand, generally means that you own everything within the walls of your unit, but not the exterior or the land. Now, you may still share those side-to-side walls like you would in a townhome, but you could also have neighbors above and below you. Now, the building structure, the siding, the roof, the parking lots, the shared spaces, all of that are owned by the condo association and they're maintained with your HOA dues. So the question is, why does this matter? Well, a big one is because it affects financing. Purchasing a condo, on one hand, as a primary residence with a mortgage loan is super simple. So the question is, why does this matter? Well, because it affects financing. Purchasing a condo, on one hand, as a primary residence with a mortgage loan is very simple. And in this case, that means that if you're a VT parent, then your student is actually a co-owner alongside you. But if your student is not a co-owner, well, then you as a parent would be purchasing it as an investment property. And purchasing it as an investment property creates a few more hoops for you to have to jump through. Now, many mortgage lenders enforce this guideline that's known as the 50% rule. At least 50% of the units in a condo complex must be owner occupied in order for that condo to then qualify for traditional financing as an investment property. And I'll tell you, it can be tough to find a complex here in Blacksburg where at least 50% of the units are owner occupied. So that can greatly limit your options or require more specialized loans. That said, if you are paying cash or you're working with a lender who is experienced in condo financing, this hurdle can be navigated pretty successfully. Now, townhomes, on the other hand, come with fewer lending restrictions, and that can mean a smoother loan process and sometimes better interest rates and loan terms. And when you're comparing properties, it's crucial to factor in what your HOA fees would be with your monthly costs. You want to know what they cover and what they don't cover, and how that fits into your affordability of the specific units. Now, before we go on, if you're a VT parent considering purchasing a property for your student, chances are you have a long list of questions that Google probably isn't doing the best job at answering. Now, not to worry, I created a VT Parents Buyer's Guide specifically designed for parents of Virginia Tech students to help them navigate the process entirely. So you can personally send me a text or email and I would be happy to send it to you and take a ton of the stress away. All right, next up, location on the bus route. Because one of the smartest things you can do when buying a condo or a townhome for your Hokie is to think about how they're gonna get to class. Now, parking on campus is limited, it's pricey, and it's not guaranteed for everyone. And that's why so many students rely on Blacksburg Transit, which is known as BT, and that's the local bus system, which is completely free for Virginia Tech students. Many neighborhoods that are popular with students have bus stops within easy walking distance along it, and some even have direct lines that run every 10 to 15 minutes in peak times. Now, others, on the other hand, may only have service once an hour or not at all. So the closer and more convenient the bus route, well, the more desirable your unit will be, both for your student and for future renters down the road. Places within walking distance of frequent bus lines tend to rent faster and stay rented better. So when you're house hunting, check the bus map, or here's a tip, even better, go to Google Maps, type in the address on campus that you're interested in, say Burris Hall, for example, which is right near the middle of campus, and then select the transit option to navigate. This will show you exactly how far of a walk that condo or townhome unit is from the nearest bus stop. Other important questions to ask are things like, is there a safe sidewalk? What would it look like for a tenant to get back to their unit from a bus stop if it's downpouring or if it's the freezing temperatures of January or February here in Blacksburg? These details matter more than most people think, and they can make or break how happy your student will be living here. Next, let's talk about something a lot of parents don't know. You can actually buy a property with an existing lease in place, because sometimes you'll find a great townhome or condo, say early on, like in October or November, and it's already leased to other students through the end of July the next year. Now that's a pretty normal lease calendar, from August to the following July. Well, that doesn't mean that you have to pass on it. In fact, it can actually work to your advantage. When you buy a property with a current existing lease in place, you become the new landlord. Now those tenants stay, the lease terms stay, and the rent payments now come to you or your property manager instead of the old owner. Now this means that you can have rental income from day one, which can help cover your mortgage, HOA fees, and other costs. And if that lease runs through the next July, which it probably will, you'll have time to plan for when your student will move in, and you can keep renting it out for longer if your student's plans change. Now the key is making sure that your rent covers your costs, or at least comes close. So if that rent, on the other hand, is far below what you'll pay in mortgage and fees, well, you could end up losing money in the short term. And it's really important to run those numbers. Now we, together, you and I, can look at how much similar places rent for, what your total cost will be each month, and if this unit is currently under rented, or the current landlord is charging the tenants below market value for some reason, well, it can make sense to maybe take a small loss each month for a little while until your child moves in and the other renters, and then you bring up the monthly rental rate to a rate that sizes up with other similar units. Now, a good local agent like myself can help you analyze the lease, understand tenants' rights, and estimate what the place could earn after that current lease ends. Now let's talk about timing and how that plays into why it might be best to purchase a unit with an existing lease in place. And trust me, this is one that surprises almost every new hokey parent. In Blacksburg, the student rental cycle runs really early. Most leases line up with the school year, so they start in August and they end the following July. But here's what catches families off guard. Students can start looking for housing for the next academic year as early as October. Yes, you heard that right, October. Some eager, overly ambitious students can start looking that early. The majority of leases will be signed between January, February, March, and they'll trickle on after that. But earlier on, especially for popular neighborhoods close to bus routes with great amenities like a pool or a gym on site. So that means if you're thinking about buying for your student to move in next fall, well, you're going to want to start looking earlier in the fall semester months, not in May or June right before they're set to move in. So starting early gives you time to find the right place, get your financing lined up, and it allows your student to offer up those extra bedrooms to their friends before their friends go and secure a lease somewhere else just to make sure they have a place to stay. Now, of course, it likely won't make sense to purchase a property in, say, September and just let it sit empty until the next August when your child and their friends plan to move in. But that's where finding a place with an already existent lease can really be to your benefit, because when your child and their friends would normally start their search in October or November, you can confidently offer up those bedrooms to your child's friends and still be bringing in cash flow on your investment from the existing lease, or at least breaking even until your child and their friends are set to move in. Finally, let's talk about managing it all, especially if you don't live here in Blacksburg full time. Owning a student rental from another city or another state can sound well, overwhelming. Who handles the repairs? Who collects the rent? What if something breaks in the middle of the night? And that's where a good property management company comes in. And there are several reputable property managers here in Blacksburg who specialize in student housing. Now, for a monthly fee, which is usually a percentage of the rent, they handle everything. Advertising the unit, screening tenants, collecting rent, handling maintenance requests, scheduling repairs, even turning over the unit between tenants. Now, understandably, you may not need all those services, but if you're living in another town, even just those overnight maintenance issues can make this service very much worth the money. It may even help to have someone else collecting the rent to avoid that awkward situation for your student if your son or daughter's friend hasn't paid their bills yet and you've got to be the bad guy tracking him down to ask for it. Property management companies will also make sure that you're following Virginia's landlord tenant laws, which is important if you're not familiar with them. Now, if you prefer to self-manage instead, just know that you'll need a good team on the ground. Probably a handyman, cleaner, maybe a trusted friend or a local contact. But most parents find it's worth the management fee to have a pro handle it all. So that way they can focus on their student and not stress about a leaking dishwasher or a tenant who's lost their key. So to wrap up, let's hit the main points one more time. Buying a condo or a townhome in Blacksburg can be a smart move, but it's not for everyone. And I'll help you identify which is right for you. Knowing the difference between a condo and a townhome and how that affects both your responsibilities and your mortgage is super important. You also want to prioritize properties that are close to a good bus route because it's huge for your students' daily quality of life and for keeping the property rented in the future. Also, and this is a big one, don't be afraid of a property with a current lease because that can mean steady rental income right away, as long as those numbers make sense. And it can help with the timing of everything because remember, students start looking for housing super early. And finally, if you live out of town, finding a good property management company to hire for all those day-to-day responsibilities can be incredibly helpful. So if you'd like help figuring out if buying makes sense for your family, or if you're just curious to see what's out there in the market and available, feel free to reach out anytime. My cell phone number and email address are on the screen, and these will personally connect you with me. We help Hokie families every single day, and I would love to help yours too. So thanks for watching, and as always, go Hokies!